Well, I reckon, not that any of you don't, you can sponsor minis anytime, but I reckon with the bulk of the boxes being opened up here in the beginning, why don't we get a little bit into this segment? And honestly, for all of you out there, this is really the only other segment that I wanted to get into, because last night did so much in terms of storytelling and even proposing a story that the only thing that I think I can really add would be this consideration. And Evelyn, you did say that noir can work at any level because it is character driven, and I agree, because it is supposed to be internal. In higher levels, though, when you have access every day to detection spells and scrying, instant answers from the undead or from the dead, oh, who killed you? Oh, it was this guy. It was Stabby Joe. You're like, Stabby Joe, I should have known it. We call him Stabby Joe for a reason. At higher levels, unless you really sit down and curate the spell list that's available, or just say, yeah, we're not playing with magic classes. So if you want to, you could be a barbarian, a fighter or something. Part of the, at least in the setting of Eberron, part of the attraction is that you don't have high power levels. You can't just get instant answers. In the document here of Moorgrave Miscellany, the King of Corvair is a 7th level fighter, and he was a veteran in the war. He didn't lead from an armchair. So when the big person in the local area is level 7, and there's probably only going to be the one king, he might have some other people who are close to that, level 6, maybe someone around level 7. Well, if you disagree, Evelyn, then you're welcome to do so. I'm not opposed to other viewpoints, and I'll shout them out, especially for consideration. But when you reach higher levels, it can be a lot easier to just find all the answers you want with the spells, unless you're being very careful about curating the spells. As a DM, I guess you could always do an elaborate dance with the answers, but then are we having a role-playing game, or are we playing, your DM is finding ways to be coy about your spells that you choose? Because you can cast those spells every day you wake up in a normalized 5th edition setting. Now, to an extent, I may agree, Evelyn, if instead of a short rest being an hour and a long rest being 8 hours, that is once per day, if a short rest is a day and a long rest is a week, that might still be able to provide a little bit of the mystery, a little bit of everything isn't immediately available all of the time. By casting Speak with Dead on a murder victim. By rolling the 10% chance for divine intervention, well, 10% or higher. Yeah, scrying in a close knit, like a neighborhood, with which you're intimately familiar. A spell like clairvoyance, not even scrying, but a spell like clairvoyance or arcane eye can do a lot. And at that point, the drama comes down to the person is on a stakeout inside, an apartment with coffee, and there's not necessarily a real threat like, being a stakeout in the car outside of the perp's house or the suspect's house or the like. Right, so they can't say, unless they knew the killer, but they can describe the killer. And again, I guess we're coming into how narrow, like how do we want to narrow this? That this it does say in here that the criminals are intelligent. But you get to a point then where, because the criminal did everything so perfectly to avoid every magic spell, how many of these people can plausibly exist in a low power world? And I don't want to I don't want to confuse anyone, because for those of you who know of Eberron, Eberron has a lot of magic. Magic is widespread. However, magic isn't very deep. Cantrips are about as far as a lot of people end up getting. Wand use as a self-defense or as a weapon. There's these like public stones that will cast prestidigitation on you and clean you up, so your clothes and your presentation, so you look better. So a lot of these like cantrip simulations, or there's like the effect of ever burning torches that are lamp lights on the streets. So there's a lot of magic around, and so that could baffle some things like detect magic to a degree, perhaps. Hey, Misfit, welcome. I suppose, Ivalon. No, I understand it. It's how far do you want that to go? And for if you're a DM in this case, Ivalon, or if you're steeped in this, or this is a bread and butter topic for you, you may very well have a way for, the villain, the murderer, the thief, to use alter self. It's a second level spell, so that means that this person's at least level 3, which is a notable person, right? At level 3, you are a relevant figure in the metropolitan area. So the big city, your name probably shows up on newspapers, or if they don't, they your name is on the lips of people who know, even if you're not in the newspaper. Tonight is a fun taxes and canceling a bunch of subscriptions to manage my monthly spending. Oh, I've juggled that before. Scala Grimmer, thank you very much for the follow and welcome. And so when it comes to Eberron, and Ivalon, you're making good points for noir as a whole, especially if you're an author. You have total control over everything that happens in the story. With the presentation that we're going through, we have 4 different people with 4 different characters here. And they're each going to do their own thing. They're going to use whatever powers they come into. They're going to, they're going to level up probably slowly. But in a world where the king of the largest, most developed continent or country is level 7 at this nationally recognized level, as characters in your chronicle or your adventure, or your campaign, whatever you want to call it, you might reach level 3 or 4, to be recognized in the city. And if that's only in Eberron, and if that's only for this fantasy storytelling, then that's one of the considerations, and exactly why I want to have this discussion. And so, Ivalon, I sincerely appreciate you throwing out these points, because many of us are used to having full access to spell lists, or we're used to saying, "Oh yeah, so by the time I hit level 14, I think I'll be pretty comfortable with my character at that point." Level 14 in Eberron, and in this noir style, you are international, bordering on interplanetary in your notoriety. And then, of course, in that point, you know, it's the matter of scaling. So what exists in a low power setting that could threaten you by that point in time? And with that, I want to show off the non-player characters in the back of the monster manual, because most of the monsters you're facing are going to be other people. You know, for example, this acolyte here. It is. If you have 4 really good players that understand what you're going for and can delve into that and to externalize aspects of their internal anguish, then you are absolutely correct in that you can, I think you could do that very smoothly. Misfit, you feel threatened right now? But take a look at this acolyte, right? This is a CR 1/4. Now I want you to take a look at our 0 level characters. So here we have our gnome. This is our beat reporter, right? He's a chronicler. He works for a newspaper. He has 4 hit points. This and he would have an 11 AC, right? Base 10 plus his 1 dex mod. Our acolyte here has an armor class of 10, but he has 9 hit points. Possibly higher if you want to roll the 2d8. In that case, he could have up to 16. And on top of that, if you take a look at the spells that can be cast, for example, Sacred Flame as a cantrip. So this is like having a revolver in a sense. Sacred Flame deals like 1d8 or 1d10, I want to say. Here we go. Sacred Flame, 1d8 radiant damage. And so, with 1 shot from this CR 1/4 NPC, our gnome reporter has gone from being healthy into either dying, or if you want to play with the injured rules, he has taken an injury. Eberron, you say compare hit dice. So in this case, it would be, well, I mean, so it's saying 2d8. Now, an Archmage at a CR 12 destroys the party. Having this be, if you go by the stats of an Archmage as your villain, this is going to be, pretty disastrous. Right, so they have, each of our level 0 characters has 1 D4 hit, a D4 hit die. Yeah, and the Archmage is 18d8. Because you could look at it that way. See, with monsters and such, it's a little weird. Because the challenge rating is presuming 4 characters of the same level. If you want to look at it as hit die as well, then we could look at this as singularly an 18th level caster. Which, hey, there's 9th level spells on the Archmage. So for sure, this is a villain to a level 0 sort of gumshoe hitting the streets of my local neighborhood. Oh, yeah, right there. 18th level spellcaster. Yep. Now, take a look at the bandit. Right? Actually, we cracked open a bandit for Trustaflumph. So here we go. We have 11 hit points, which is almost 3 times as many as our reporter, and an AC 12 armor class. And why that can also be difficult to overcome is unless you are a dwarf or an elf. Now, there's other races that have that probably have a weapon proficiency or a natural attack, but gnomes don't get that. We have no proficiency with weapons, meaning we're most likely going to be using a dex weapon or a finesse weapon, and we get a d20 plus 1 if it comes down to using a crossbow or if it comes down to using a dagger. This is why combat in this kind of environment, it's not frowned upon, but it is deadly. You want to try and avoid it. Talk your way out, bribe, extort people, blackmail. Try and get the jump on someone if you can, because even these low-level monsters, right? A CR 1/8 bandit. You know, this could be a bar patron. You know, this could be the big guy at the end of the bar, and you're just trying to get some info, and you say something that he doesn't like and is drunk and is willing to swing on you. Francis, our gnome, has an AC of 11 and a +1 to attack with a dex weapon, and 4 hit points. There's not a racial weapon that carries over like from 3rd edition, Nicolix. Well, I mean, whether you use CR or hit dice, we're still looking. I want people to consider the numbers, because the power scale is different than what we might consider to be a traditional D&D campaign. And it could be very easy for an NPC with CR 1/8 stats, this bandit, for example, can do a lot of damage against a group. I mean, look at this bandit captain. Like, he's the super tough dude. Like, he's probably the bouncer. He's like higher level. I mean, so if you want to go by hit die, if you don't want to go by challenge rating, probably, I don't know, maybe he's like the professional like lifter, and in between competitions he might be a bouncer or something. This bandit captain will destroy this party. The more dice rolls you give, the more chances they have to hit and do damage. That's true. It is the more chances. Just remember that unless your race or your background gives you proficiency with armor or weapons, you don't have it. And especially, I had it open here. Hang on. Armor proficiency. So mind this. Anyone can put on a suit of armor or strap a shield to an arm. Only those proficient in the armor's use know how to wear it effectively, however. Your class gives you proficiency with certain types of armor. Some races do as well. If you wear armor that you lack proficiency with, you have disadvantage on any ability check, saving throw, or attack roll that involves strength or dexterity, and you can't cast spells. So we can roll up in full plate armor on this gnome, and he's just going to be a gnome in a can, because he's going to have disadvantage on strength and dex checks, attacks, and saves. And so all 4 of these characters in particular, the only one that has anything close to a higher AC is our Dragonforged character, because she naturally has an armor class of 13 plus proficiency bonus. And so that means she's going to be starting with a 15 AC. Oh, and my battery died in my headphones. 1 second. Dragon Forged. Specifically. Strength 2, Intelligence 1. You get some aspects of being a Warforged, and
if you want to continue the story, go ahead.
Oh, hey Shukan, welcome. Yeah, I'll be able to do so in a little bit. Can you hang out for just a little bit here, Shukan? Oh, I'm sorry, it's going to be 17. Because of her forged scale, it's 15 plus proficiency bonus. So in the group, she's definitely the tank, because she's starting out with a 17 AC, and that's not even wearing armor. That's just what she has. She doesn't have to sleep. She does get she gets a breath weapon. So she is a tank. Well, it's kind of a breath weapon. It's not necessarily. It simulates one. Because you're kind of like a Dragonborn Robocop. So, of the group, she's the one who can stand up to the bandit for sure. But she's also like 2 years old in her remade form, who carries a lot of regrets and doubts. She is a cadet, so she has military connections. So she'd be able to survive and maybe cover for the others. Which, and you know what? In this environment, as the DM, you'd want to note that. Right? That, Almire here. Almire is the heavy of the group. Francis is the face of the group. Mula is the hands of the group. And the eyes and the hands. And Ulf is the guy with contacts. He can get things done. He knows druids, he knows criminals. There's a lot going on here. And so we have an awesome party dynamic. But we just have to be super careful in our encounters, because the armor proficiency is going to be big. We're going to have 3 squishies and then a mega tank at level 0. The weapons are not as bad, right? Because if you proficiency with a weapon allows you to add your proficiency bonus to the attack roll for any attack you make with that weapon. If you make an attack roll using a weapon with which you lack proficiency, you do not add your proficiency bonus to the attack roll. So for these characters, they're getting whatever their favorite stat is. Whether it's an inborn magical trait from a dragon mark, or it is dex or strength. Some mashed lalas. I see how it is, Misfit. Mm-hmm. You're going to be here for a while, Shukan? All right. We can pop this box when we finish this this segment. See here, a commoner. This is really what the majority of. This is the majority of who, like, these are not the surly bar patron at the end of the bar, but this is someone who can square up with your character and give him a good fight, right? 4 hit points. No real, I mean, the characters have advantages because it's not 10 all the way across. And, here is, they have a club or something else. So it's a challenge rating 0. These could still get some swings in, right? Look at this. It deals 1d4 bludgeoning damage. And you have a +2 to hit. Well, our gnome only has an 11 AC. So, a 60% chance to hit. And with that, there is a 25% chance to go for an injury or a knockout blow. with one hit from a commoner. Now, interestingly enough, and this is going to set a little bit of... Here we go. This is going to set a little bit of the parameters for thinking about the stats, and then we can discuss some magic use as well. If you get this supplement, in Chapter 4, it's called the Gumshoe Chronicles, and it's a series of level 0 adventures that can help prime you as a DM or as a player in how you can go about some one-shot mysteries. A couple of them linked together, but others can just be, you know, their own thing. There are two people here. We have a Silver Flame Knight, and if you take a look, this Knight isn't messing around. This is a challenge rating 3. Now, fortunately, the Knight is on the good side. Now, the storytelling concept, at least as I imagine this Knight was placed, is this is a boundary, and you do not want to contact this boundary. You do not want to cross it, either as in crossing it or making it cross as in upset it, because this Knight can end you. This isn't a town guard that's, you know, a lot of PCs feel like, well, we're superior to, and we're just going to knock them out and drag them behind the barn and there's no consequences. The Knight in this level 0 Gumshoe Chronicle is a boundary. And fortunately, he starts out at least neutral towards you, if not in a somewhat decent disposition. You may even be able to influence him to help you, and wouldn't that be something? Now, another character that you can get into a scrap with, and really the focus of the antagonist here, is a goblin. A simple goblin. One goblin in a bowling alley. Yes, she owns a bowling alley. It's technically 9 pins, but you get what I'm saying here. Gigantes, Gith, Knolls. Here we go. A goblin is a challenge rating 1/4 creature who has a +4 to hit you. So if you upset her, is she an ultimate boundary? No, the 4 level 0 characters could probably take her down. 7 hit points. AC of 15, but that's if she's wearing her leather armor and shield. Probably not. We're probably looking at a 12 or a 13 if she has some sort of, like, padding on or something. And if she's super suspicious, because she might be, because she runs a gambling den in this bowling alley. You know, it might be leather armor, but not a shield, so it'd be 13. But if she wields, well, in this case it's a scimitar, but it could be a dagger or something, a +4 to hit, and is dealing, if it's a dagger, 1d4 +2. All it takes is one shank from her, and we're starting to get injuries, most likely, on our players. And so she's not a hard limit, but if you're creating these personae dramatis, make sure that you can have their stats act as a part of the presentation for your players to observe and to measure their skill against. You don't have to say she's wearing leather armor and is wielding a dagger in her hand or on her hip. You could, but if you do want to go for the noir style, if you want them to internalize the situation, to measure the risks and rewards themselves, you can describe the goblin proprietress in this gambling den and they can make a decision from there if she's worth trying to take down, or is it really going to be easier as level 0 gumshoes to just try and negotiate with her? Hey, Dark Wolf, welcome. Knight doesn't always mean good. He could be lawful evil. This one, however, is probably going to be on the side of good, because he is working for the Silver Flame, which is a good, it is a good religion in Eberron. But lawful good does not mean lawful nice. And if your characters are sinful people who have regrets or who have committed crimes in the past, I'm looking at you, Ulf, especially. Or if he has a disposition to not like the newspaper, because Francis is a reporter for the newspaper, whether it's Francis as the reporter or the newspaper for which he works, the knight might be resistant to Francis. Or the knight might recognize Ulf is a wanted criminal after what happened with his aberrant dragon mark flaring up. Ah, old school keep on the Borderlands. And if the goblin as a bad guy in this isn't enough to dissuade a surly party, keep in mind we have another sort of piece on the board. Here's a complication of the story. There's a bouncer. A hobgoblin bouncer called Sweetie is here to deal with trouble. If the characters give Schley a difficult time, Sweetie can insert herself into the discussion, weapon first. So now, as a DM, and in using this as the example, we went over it. I don't need to replay everything. Remember that the goblin doesn't want to throw her life away either. She might be able to size up the group or say, you know what, even if I can take on one, there's still 3 others. Especially if you got that tall drink of water dragon forged. And so she doesn't necessarily want to pull a knife unless she has to. The party doesn't want to have to pull a knife unless they have to. The hobgoblin bouncer named Sweetie will pull a knife if it's a part of her job. And if we take a look at what a hobgoblin brings to the... oh, hey, there's a hellhound. There you go, oh sheeps. There's an artist's rendition of your heckin' hound. A straight-up hobgoblin, challenge 1/2. Probably has a bigger weapon, such as this D8 longsword. Might be wearing a little heavier armor. You know, especially if this isn't the bouncer's first gig, because it's her job as the bouncer to be able to handle rough people, and is probably wearing armor or carrying a harder hitting weapon. You've used them a handful of times because the players don't respect the wolves until they get close and realize what it is. Oh, yeah, because they're like, oh, wolves, we'll just go kill them because if they harass the sheep or whatever, it's a wolf. But it's not. Oh, sheeps, there is so much gorgeous artwork in the D&D books of different styles too. I love it. Oh, and Shukan, yeah, you have a hellhound about 5 feet away from you. And so if the players are like, you know what, we could shake down this little goblin for information, that may be true, but what about a goblin and a hobgoblin? Or if the goblin dips, can our 4 level 0 characters take on the hobgoblin bouncer? And if they do, what about the other people who are there to gamble and not have a fight and have the police drawn in? So there's societal pressure, right? There's societal pressure. There's the fact that everyone has a secret, and you know what? I won't look into your past. Don't look into mine. Don't bring heat down on me, and I won't shank you and leave you in the trash bin in the alleyway, in the dumpster. That's why the culture, the setting, is baked into the expectations that the player should have, and that you should keep in mind as well as the DM. So, without getting into the story, taking a look, oh, there's a bandit. So, a bandit is a possible interaction, whether it's through a social interaction, or if you gotta, give him a bloody nose. Because that could be something else, too. You don't have to fight to the death. You could land a blow and say, do you give up? And try and intimidate or offer that. Let's take a look at jackals. Well, that's a jackal wear. Jackal wears a different, I mean, it's a jackal, some of the time. It's going to be in animals. Ah, there's the death dog, the two-headed death dog. There's giant hyenas. I'm in all the gigantes. Here we go. So, group of jackals. Challenge rating 0. There's 4 of them. Well, so we have four jackals to 4 level 0 characters here. Advantage on wisdom perception checks. They have advantage on attack rolls against a creature if at least one of the other jackal allies is within 5 feet of the creature. Alright, so while they normally have a +1 to hit, it's mathematically a +6 to hit. As advantage mathematically or statistically confers a +5. Disadvantage a -5. Needs me a Death Dog mini. Well, Dark Wolf, if you pop open a box of Monster Menagerie 3, or if you want to trade, since one got busted open with Trustaflump, you might be able to do so. Hey, Nick Dirac, welcome. Yeah, the advantage makes them very deadly, especially if they're swarming in a pack like this. Yeah, if it's possible to do. And you see, Evelyn, so that's part of the point too that I'd like to make is not everything has to end in bloodshed, or it could start as a fight but end as something else. Maybe you just bloody someone's nose and they call it quits because they don't want to die either. The jackals don't want to die. Depending on the circumstances, if they're starved and going to die anyway, maybe their feral nature might take over. And if that's the case, if you are an observant survivalist, then you might say, you know what, they need some food and water, and I bet they'll be our friends. Hello, Lost Streaming Company. Oh, as a zombie without sleep. Oh, my goodness. Well, don't overdo it. Don't overdo it, Lost Streaming. I appreciate you being here and all, but you got to get some sleep when you can. Gotcha. Well, thank you for coming in and saying hi to us. Sleep well, my friend. Oh, lurk away. We're going to be finishing up this segment on discussing the power scale, or how to use the pieces on the board effectively, to not overdo things, because for many you might never have run a noir style campaign before, and if we're going into the concept that the world is low powered and you are starting off as level 0 adventurers, it can get deadly quickly if you go into it with the maybe what we could call the normal expectation of a D&D game. Now, that's not to say you can't have an archmage. An archmage may very well want to kill the players for meddling. However, the archmage might be a political figure and needs to play it cool. Needs to avoid someone disappearing, especially if one of the people in the group belongs to a noble house or belongs to a government research program. And so while we have this level 18 spellcaster, if you can talk it out, or if you are doing the internalization, because the villains are going to play by the... I mean, they are, but they're not. I hope you understand what I'm saying by this. The villains are living in the same world as the players. And while there's nothing stopping this archmage from murdering one of the... all of the party, honestly, people are going to notice, and that could cause some... ramifications. If not legal, look at it this way. The archmage needs something done. The vast majority of the workforce is probably from this neighborhood. If the workforce finds out that 4 of their friends haven't come home, that's going to cause production to plummet, or whatever's happening. Now, could you have spells that, I don't know, erase memories? Oh yeah, those exist. Could you just transport them to another plane? Sure, you could do that. They're not dead. But make sure you're bearing that in mind. You can have intelligent, you can have very powerful creatures, but they may not flex that power as instantaneously as a more traditional setting could incur. Mendari, welcome. It was fun watching the D&D game that you put up in our channel. A really nice graphical interface too. That was a lot of that was very neat, very crisp. And by the way, for this web, this could get a lot bigger, especially if we wanted to assign something. The NPC lover, if we want a quick reference, we can just choose a color here. We'll choose, I don't know, it's kind of like dusty gray brown, or gray blue. And this NPC lover could be Acolyte for quick reference. That way we have some stats and we have some knowledge. And if it's Acolyte, but maybe doesn't have spells, you could put Acolyte minus spells, but the stats of an Acolyte otherwise. Oh, all right. So you're playing Thea. Yeah, Mendari, it was a lot of fun. You were having fun together, and you were getting into it with the voices and the conversation. And I really enjoyed the artwork that was kind of going up on screen and giving a little bit of a blurb or a flash into who the characters are that you're piloting. So the attention is on you for role-playing, but off to the side, for those who are curious about who Thea looks like, you could see that as it slowly rotated through the characters. Black Echo, Dragonborn, and a Raven version of the flying class. I'm not sure what you're referencing, Black Echo. Oh, thank you, O'Sheeps. It's a mouse, and to keep it PG-13, we'll just say I have an orthopedic mouse pad. I play Nancy Drew on streams. Thea is the character I play. And hey, speaking of Nancy Drew, you know, these gumshoe stuff that we're doing here for like the low-powered stuff, pull it from Nancy Drew. Pull it from, you know, Hardy Boys. Pull it from a lot of this stuff where you have, you know, like Scooby-Doo style. You know, no one on the team has a bunch of superpowers, and they all have their thing that they can do better than others. You know, if we don't look at just the character map, take a look here. Because we don't have a class, that is leaving 2 to many more skills with which we may have proficiency on off the table. But look at this. Look at our reporter. While our reporter has stats for being a character, you do have proficiency already in these 4 skills. So he's really good at investigation. Oh, I'm sorry. This is our vault, our security expert. She has acrobatics, investigation, insight, and perception. And as we were talking about prior, on the team, right, he's the face as the reporter. He's the face. She's the eyes and ears and the dexterous hands. Almeyer is a tank. You know, the heavy of the group. And Ulf is the person who knows people, the contacts. He has the druids he could talk to. He has the criminals he could talk to. So he's not a face. So maybe an informant might be a little bit better. And they have roles and traits that back up their genre, what they do on the team. And if they're sticking to that to try and get through whatever the murder mystery is, right? Our challenge last night that Derek left us with was we have a body that's found. Now, link the body to any bubble and not a character directly. If that link, if we could just roll randomly, or let's say we go down to this concept of no outsiders. The body could be an outsider, like or someone who's touched by that lineage, a tiefling, which do exist in Eberron, or an Asimar, or an Asimar, depending on how you want to pronounce it, or it could be someone with like a partial lineage, or it could have just been a murder with a note stuck to it that was left as a warning to anyone else, and the party just happens to find it. And now suddenly we might have a serial killer in our neighborhood. Great, we have all these other problems. Moolah has to go back home to a lover that she no longer loves and regrets. You know, Francis has job stress and family issues. Almeyer is kind of blissfully ignorant to the world, yet carries the resentment and the guilt upon her death that's sort of manifested or like burnt in permanently in her brain as she was brought back as like RoboCop, a RoboCop Dragonborn. And Ulf is in a criminal network that he could get in trouble for this, or he might be able to get information, but what if that draws heat on him? And on top of that, if it wasn't a criminal, the Druid Order to which he belongs is a very anti-outsider, outfit. Now, many in Eberron might say, that's fine, we don't want outsiders. You know, the planes that come very close to touching Eberron all the time cause problems. But this can still cause problems for Ulf, even if a lot of society accepts it. He may not personally want people struck down that didn't deserve it. Let's say it was a tiefling, and the tiefling was a banker, or the tiefling worked at the casino. Now all of a sudden the casino is probably locking down because one of their employees was being blamed for being an outsider, and there's apparently a killer going around targeting them. But let's retract this back. And by the way, so how can each of the people on the team as the face, the heavy, the contacts. How does that work? Let's bring it over to... let's put our heavy in the spotlight real quick. And what can she do? A body was found that's related to the 200 gold piece debt that she has. The 200 gold piece debt she has is something that she carried with her into death, and therefore brought back with her rebirth into her warforged body. This was the family from whom she stole something. She kind of snuck away from the group, went in to go steal from this family because she wanted to prove herself and to, and she was kind of a spoiled noble before this, and she was entered into a military outfit, more like an officer's training to be a cadet, and then she got caught up and died in an explosion. And so in her mind, she owes a debt to the family because of what she stole. And if the body is related to the debt, then this could have been a surviving member of the family. And how would Almayer feel if the body was found that carried a note of forgiveness or apology? Dear Almayer, I'm trying to track you down to let you know that I don't blame you for what happened in war. I understand that you ended up paying the price, the price of death yourself, and have been reborn through this reunification effort. And I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry and I forgive you. Is she going to leak oil from her eyes or some equivalent? I mean, she might still have tear ducts. She's kind of partial dragonborn. And what is this going to do now? This is going to alter her life goal because she still owes the debt, but not just a monetary debt, but does she feel like she has to protect this family? How is this going to interact with her simple mind? And therefore, if that comes back around, her life goal, if it cycles back, if we follow the lines to Almayer, how is this going to spread out to, her reporting to another cadet that then will cycle through a lot of things and then eventually bleed outside of Almayer? Meanwhile, the party might want to investigate the body. Almayer, the tank, the person who has the most offense and defense, and the party of aspiring weak gumshoes relies upon to be this bulwark of military strategy and defense and offense, is all but offline, because if she is internalizing it, like Evelyn, said, your characters, as a DM, your hopefully your players are understanding that there is an emotional investment in this, because this is not just a straight up kick in the door style session. Almayer is all but offline for a while as this happens, meaning that there's effectively only 3 people, but they got to lug around this big, very obvious piece of military tech with them. Are they the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? Not quite, Shukan. In concept, perhaps. I mean, hey, you could rip any episode of Scooby-Doo for a campaign. Exactly, Nick Durek. So we moved on from level 0 characters, right? Is it now connecting them all? They're still level 0 characters, and they've been connected. The discussion that we're having is, as a DM, if you're presenting this kind of noir storytelling, this low level, this low power storytelling, what are the boundaries that you should be aware of? And not just the boundaries that are indicated up here for the storyline and for the interconnectivity, but when you come over, here's the monster manual. If you take a look, I don't know, they encounter for some reason a boar, or we could even say they broke into an animal fighting ring to try and get answers. But to do so, they have to prove themselves to like the head bookie. And the best way to do that is going to be versus a brown bear. And in a normal, as a 4 level 1 adventurers, you should be able to take down a brown bear with not too much problem. Especially if you have a healer and a tank and all these traditional roles. If you're level 0 with little to no magic and you do not have armor proficiency nor weapon proficiency, all of a sudden, this challenge rating 1 brown bear in a pit despite there being 4 of you, and even having swords, even having armor. Heck, you probably don't even want the armor, because the armor is going to interfere with any spell casting and will give you disadvantage on your attacks. And so here you are relying on 10 plus your dex, right? Our gnome has an 11. Our shifter has a 13. Our aberrant dwarf has an 11. And our dragon forged has a 17. Oh, I didn't see your question up above, Shukan. Sorry if it's been out there if it's been up there for a while. But yeah, if cantrips that are racial, such as with the aberrant dragon mark. You know, dwarves don't have racial cantrips, but the dragon mark instills cantrips, or one anyway. And so yes, as a level 0 character, if you get something from your race, or you get something from your background, that's what you get. And then you get 4 hit points plus your con modifier, and you have 1 d4 hit die. So you can see how a brown bear as a CR1 is gonna put in a lot of work, especially if Almire here isn't up for fighting because she's still so mopey. The bandit we were talking about, which was mentioned in the Gumshoe Chronicles of Moorgrave Miscellany as running into. We get back over here, go back to a bandit. You know, most level 1 adventurers, which is where a lot of D&D starts. Oh, a bandit, whatever, we'll put them down. We kill those, you know, hand over fist in Fable or wherever else. Challenge rating 1/8, and you're like, whatever. 11 hit points? 11 hit points is almost 3 times the amount of hit points that our gnome has. Let alone there's this 12 armor class, and the fact that he has a +3 to hit. This 1d6 plus 1 slashing is going to reduce people to unconsciousness and dying, or if you want to use the injury alternate rule set in this supplement, then it's going to start adding injuries to the characters instead. Let alone if he gets the drop on him and snipes at him with a light crossbow. 1d8 plus 1, oof. And so a lot of this has to be internalized. You can have brawls, you can have sort of bare knuckles fighting, but you make sure you keep in mind the power level. Because this noir storytelling isn't always about winning in combat. It can be outsmarting. It can be outsmarting the villain. Even, you know, making progress, if only by running away from your own problems. Which, you know, Ivlon, you're pointing out because noir is internal. Yes, you could technically run a level 20, an epic level noir adventure. Because it's your problem, your demon. And those are often harder to run away from. Or to overcome through some sort of trial or combat. Yep, Shukan, I think I've said my piece about you know, using different figures as boundaries, right? If you have this knight character, that's a hard boundary for level 4. Do not get on this knight's bad side, because hopefully he won't kill you, but he can knock all of you up pretty quickly. Even Almire. And just be aware and don't approach this like you would a normal, quote unquote. I mean, what's a normal D&D game? As a normal D&D game. As you do gain levels, be aware of the assets that come on board at each level. And remember as well, at least in the Eberron setting, in Eberron, the king of the largest, most developed country is a level 7 war veteran. This fame and notoriety is an excellent check on what you're doing. And there's nothing wrong with running a bunch of 1 or 2 shot games that each like finds a clue and builds up. And so by the time, you know, you're at the end of several months of gameplay, a campaign even, you might be level 4. You might, depending on the scale of the villainy. How deep does the rabbit hole go? Maybe you've made it and you are relevant on a national scale at level 5. And keep this in mind compared to the adventures that you've already run or that you're going through. And think about how that character, if you drop that character into Eberron, with the mentality, the power, the equipment, and all that, what would happen? In fact, that could even be an interesting... If you want a nice noir, a very simple noir plot, you know, have gen up these level 0 characters, right? And if it's not a villain, it doesn't have to be, but certainly as an outsider or something weird that needs to be investigated, drop your character right here. And this is the antagonist, or this is the cause of all the concerns. Maybe your arrival was unintendedly murderous because you were ripped from the game and the dimension you played in, and when you manifested a burst of energy, killed all of the level 0 commoners around you. And so you had to run and hide because you're like, I just murdered people. Or, you know, who knows what could happen. I know what happens back in my home, and I maybe I'll set this right. And so suddenly we have a body, and it was by your player character from another world. And now look at the ripples, boo or whatever, right? And let the players go through it. And if you're already familiar with the character, that is going to be the ultimate, like the big reveal. Have fun, especially because your level 5 character will be at the power level of a nationally relevant person in Eberron. Yeah, I know, like quote-unquote normal. All right, anyway, so everyone, I got to get up and I'm going to take a 10-minute break to refresh myself. Shukan, when we come back, I will pop that box that you sponsored, okay? So, thank you all for joining me for this conversation. We can still talk noir. I think I've talked about, really all about that technique that I can. And we could talk about circumstances or building a story in some way. Nothing too official, just casual conversation. If you have questions or workshop stuff, we can get to it as well. But anyway, I'll see you in about 10 minutes.